The spinal cord is located in the vertebral column. So this area is the vertebral column. If you remember it from chapter 7. So start here from foramen magnum, that is part of the occipital bone, and it goes around this area, which is L1, L2. So the function of the spinal cord is receiving sensory information. So that information that is coming from skin, from the joints and tendons and muscle, skeletal muscle, and that goes to the brain. Also, the motor information that is sent from the brain, it passes through the spinal cord, and that goes to skeletal muscles. And there is also spinal reflexes, that is a combination of sensory and motor functions, and I will talk about that a little bit later. So here is the before I talk about the spinal cord itself, I can discuss a few different things about the anatomy of the vertebrae. So one is the vertebral body that is located anteriorly. Again, this is chapter 7, and this is the spinous process, which is located posteriorly. And this area, usually around this area, you have the transverse processes. It's not shown here properly. An area between the vertebral arch and vertebral body, this is the vertebral foramen, this area. So if you put multiple vertebrae on top of each other, or if you create multiple vertebral foramen on top of each other, then you will create a vertebral canal. And a spinal cord is located inside the vertebral canal. Also, if you put the vertebrae on top of each other, there is an area created in this area on the side, on each side, and that's called intervertebral foramen. Intervertebral foramen. So the content of intervertebral foramen is the spinal nerve in this area. So this is the spinal nerve. So the spine is covered by 3 different types of meninges. Meninges are connective tissues. So from deep to superficial, we start with this one that is called pia mater. Okay, this one, and that is attached to the spinal cord itself. Then you have this one that you can see, and this is called arachnoid mater. This one, the middle one, arachnoid, and there is a space here, and this is called the subarachnoid space. This dark area that you see between pia mater and arachnoid, this is called arachnoid space, subarachnoid space. And the content of that is CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, and I will come back to that in chapter 14 and talk about that in more detail. So the third meninges is this one. Okay, that's called dura mater. So this one, the more superficial one. So this is the thickest one also, and there is a space here. There is one space between the dura and an arachnoid, and that is called the subdural space, subdural. And there is another one that is more superficial to the dura mater, and that is epidural space. So this one. So the content of the epidural space is usually blood vessels and fat. And the content of the subdural space is actually a potential space. So normally the dura and arachnoid, they are attached to each other, but there is some blood vessels can pass through this area. Also, you can see some other structures. One is called the denticulate ligament. So this ligament is attaching the spinal cord to the wall of the vertebral column or vertebral canal, so on each side, and that stabilizes the spinal cord. you can also see these ones. These are the nerve fibers. You can see that. So this is called the ventral root, which is located anteriorly, and this is the dorsal root, which is located posteriorly. And the dorsal root contains cell bodies, and this is called the dorsal root ganglion. So the combination of the ventral and dorsal root together, that makes the spinal nerve. Okay, and then they branches to the ventral ramus and the dorsal ramus. So ventral goes anteriorly and laterally, and dorsal ramus goes to the back. There is also this one. This is called sympathetic chain, but I will come back to that later in more detail, and I will show it to you what it does. Okay, so some specific structures in the spinal cord. One is called conus medullaris, which is around this area. So this is the end of the spinal cord. It has a shape like a cone. This is why it's called conus medullaris. Then it's called filum terminale, and this is from the tip of the conus medullaris goes all the way to the coccyx. This is made of pia mater, and again that stabilizes the spinal cord, so it does not move sideways that much. Then is the cauda equina. So these fibers that you see, these are the cauda equina. So the spinal cord ends in L1, L2, and after that these fibers that you see, these are the fibers that are the roots that will make eventually the spinal nerve. So here in the lumbar area and in the sacral area, these fibers are really long. You can see that they are very long because the spinal cord ends around this area. And the articular ligament, which you cannot see it here, but I showed you in the previous image. So it's like ligaments like this. Okay, so these are connective tissue that connects the spinal cord to the wall of the vertebral canal. So this is the wall of the vertebral canal. This is the wall, so stabilizes the spinal cord.